The most effective massaging regimen includes these three factors. The first is pinching, the second is pressing, and the third is stretching. Each one helps promote regrowth in a different way. The bottom line is if we want to maximize our chances for regrowth, we need to be hitting all three of these elements, the pinching, the pressing, and the stretching in each massage routine. So this sounds easy enough, but it's actually really hard to do all of this. One massage session is 20 minutes long. And for the massages to be the most effective, we need to massage our entire scalps, not just the areas that are thinning. So in one single massage session, it's nearly impossible to pinch, press, and stretch our scalps everywhere. So we're really spreading ourselves too thin. So the workaround is, in order for us to maximize our time massaging, we have to break our scalps into 3 segments. For each 20-minute massage session, we're only going to be focusing on one part of our scalp. So here are the segments. The first segment is our hairline. This covers our forehead, the front sides of our scalp, and up through to the halfway point on the tops of our heads. We can see it marked here. The second segment is our vertex. This is our crown, the back half of the tops of our heads. You can see it highlighted that this is the region that we want to be focusing on during this scalp segment. And the last segment is the sides, back, and napes of our scalps. In my experience, massaging here is just as important as massaging in the other 2 areas. When we're pinching, pressing, or stretching, we need to firmly plant our hands against the scalp skin so that when our hands move, the scalp skin moves with it. This is what a pinch looks like. Notice how I'm pressing the skin firmly and then I'm lifting it. And sometimes I'm rolling that skin in between my fingers when I can get a good enough lift without creating any friction. So I'm not dragging my fingers across the surface. So this is really minimizing the friction and the scratching that would happen between our fingers and our scalp skin normally if we were just scratching our head. So I'm going to use this piece of paper to demonstrate the double pinch. And what you're going to want to do here is you're going to want to push down onto the piece of paper, create no friction between the paper itself and your fingertips or finger pads. And then you're going to push the paper together and create the folds and the creases that you see. That's the exact same thing that we want to create in the scalp skin. We don't want to just drag our fingers across the scalp. We want to actually lift the skin up. For the rest of this video, we're going to be covering each scalp segment one by one. And for each segment, we're going to cover how to do the pinches, how to do the presses, and then how to do the stretches. So as far as each 20-minute massage session, this is how it's going to go. We're going to start with a general warm-up. Next, we're going to focus the entire rest of the time for just our hairline, just our vertex, or just the sides of our scalp. For this one segment, we're going to be doing the pinching, the pressing, and the stretching. If one massage session's focus is the hairline, then we do a 3-minute general warm-up all over the scalp, and then we move to the hairline and do 6 minutes of pinching, 6 minutes of pressing, and 5 minutes of stretching. Now that we've covered all of that, let's finally get into the massages. Let's start with our first scalp segment, our hairline. So we begin this 20-minute session like we do with every other massage session. It's a 3-minute warm-up of our entire scalp. So how do we do this? We press the skin against our scalp lightly but firmly and move the skin around to get some blood flow going. So our fingers are planted firmly. We're using both of our hands at the same time, and we slowly work our way around the scalp. So we're starting at the sides, working our way backwards to the nape of the neck, and then finally pressing on the top of the head. This is firm but light pressure, 5 to 10 pounds per hand. We're not trying to induce any inflammation. We're just trying to make our scalps feel a little more alive and get a little more blood flowing. So once our 3 minutes is up, we're ready to start our focus just on the hairline. So now our focus shifts to pinching only, then pressing only, then stretching only. So first we're going to do the pinches. For the hairline pinches, there are 2 different types we can do. The first pinch is a double-handed pinch. So notice how I'm using the finger pads and the fingertips of both of my hands. I'm pressing down firmly with both hands and then squeezing my scalp skin together. I hold the pinch for about 1 or 2 seconds, and then sometimes I even shake the scalp during the pinch just to help with a little bit more elasticity and blood flow. So there's an inch or two of skin between my hands. I pinch an area, I move an inch or so to the next place that I'm going to pinch, and then I pinch again. I do this until I cover the whole hairline region that we highlighted earlier. So in general, I probably pinch with about 5 to 10 pounds of pressure, and then the skin looks a little red after a few minutes. So the second type of pinch is a single-handed pinch. As you can see, I'm using both of my hands at the same time to pinch below and around the hairline. For me, the skin here is a little more elastic, so I can even do single-handed pinches at the tops of my scalp. Make sure to work a few inches below and above your hairline with these types of pinches for a total of 6 minutes. Then it's time to move on to the scalp presses for the hairline. So for the hairline, there are a couple different presses. Personally, I like to use my knuckles and the backs of my fingers for this section because I can generate a lot of downward pressure this way. Now, I'm probably pushing between 10 and 20 pounds downward with each of my hands, keeping them firmly planted so I'm creating no friction against the scalp skin, and then jiggling the skin with the hands to help promote some elasticity. So I do this for about 6 minutes, and then I stop pressing and I move on to the scalp stretches for the hairline. I like to use the double-handed stretch that I'm showing you here. What you do is you place one hand's finger pads below the hairline and then another an inch or so above the hairline. You press down on the skin and then you pull the skin apart, hold for about a second, and then move on to the next section. So you work throughout the entire highlighted hairline area. I'm not stretching very aggressively, and these stretches don't really hurt, but I can definitely feel the skin tension, and my skin feels great when I'm finished with 6 minutes of stretching entirely. Then you're done. After 6 minutes of stretching, you've finished your massage routine for the hairline massage session. For the next massage session that you're going to do, your next focus will just be on the vertex segment. So let's walk through this. Just like the hairline, we start this segment with a general warm-up. Light presses all over the scalp. It's 3 minutes of just getting the blood flowing. Then it's time to move on to the pinches themselves for the vertex. So the vertex also has 2 pinching styles. The first is the double-handed pinch. Just like with the hairline, we press down with both hands, pinch between them, hold for a second or so, and then we move our hands an inch or 2 away and continue the pinching until we cover the entire vertex a few times over. The second pinch is the single-handed pinch. But this is actually pretty hard to do if your vertex is tight, and it's normal for your vertex to be very tight when you're first starting these massages, up until about 5 or so months in. So once your vertex starts to loosen, you can start incorporating these single-handed pinches. It's the same principle as before. We press, we pinch, and squeeze the skin between our hands, holding it for a second or so, releasing, and then moving on. Once your 6 minutes of pinching is up, it's time to move on to the presses only. Again, for these presses and for this region, I really like to use my knuckles and backs of my fingers. It's easy to generate a lot of downward force this way, about 10 to 20 pounds per hand. And here's another angle to show you what it looks like from the front. So you can see that I'm pressing down pretty hard. Your arms are going to get sore, but you'll adjust after a few weeks or months of doing this. And if you don't want to use your knuckles, you can also use your fingers to press instead. It's harder to generate more force this way when you're just using fingers, but it's a great way to mix things up if you're getting tired. So once your 6 minutes of pressing is up, you're ready to move on to the stretches only. So for the vertex, I prefer double-handed stretches because it's often tighter than the other parts of your scalp, like your temples, your hairline, or the sides. So just like with other regions, we press firmly down, stretch the skin, hold for 1 or 2 seconds, and then release. And then we move on to an adjacent region right afterwards, cover the vertex over and over until our 5 minutes of stretching is up. And then once your 5 minutes of stretching is up, you are done with your massage session for your vertex. You are finished. Finally, there's one last scalp massage session, and it's the sides of your scalp. So After you finish a Vertex session, your next massage session will be focused on your scalp sides and the back of the neck. Here's what this session looks like. First, it always starts with a warm-up, 3 minutes of gentle presses, pinches, whatever you want to do all around the scalp. You're going to shake the skin, get it ready for deeper massaging and more acute inflammation generation. So when our 3 minutes is up, it's time to move on to just the sides of the scalp and pinches. So for the sides of the scalp, I personally prefer single-handed pinches, and this is because these areas are so loose anyway that it's generally pretty easy to pinch with one hand. So you can even pinch with one hand on both sides of the scalp at the same time and cover twice the ground. Again, these are standard pinches. Once your 6 minutes is up, we're going to move on to the next segment, which is pressing only. So for the sides of the scalp, you can press in a few ways. Personally, I like to use my palms because of the angle. I can generate more pressure than normal, about 10 to 25 pounds per hand, and then shake the scalp skin to get the blood flowing. To reiterate, I'm not scratching at my skin. I'm pressing the skin down and moving it with my hands, so there's no friction. You can also use your knuckles if you'd like. And don't forget about the nape of your neck and the back of your head. As you can see here, I'm using my knuckles there just since the angle is easier to do it that way. So when your 6 minutes of pressing is up, we're going to move on to the final component, the stretches. So for the sides of our scalp, we can do 2 different types of stretches. The first is the double-handed stretch. We've seen it before. It's the same form as all other stretches in our other scalp segments. And we work our way around the sides and back of the scalp just with stretching with our 2 hands. But since the skin is already so loose, this is a great opportunity to also use single-handed stretches. So you can use your thumbs and finger pads to press downward onto the skin and then stretch that skin apart and hold for about 1 or 2 seconds. You can work your way around the scalp just the same way. It's all a matter of preference. After your 5 minutes of stretching are up, this session is almost done. There's one more thing to do in this session. When you're working the scalp sides, there's also a place that you really want to spend a few minutes working on. It's the scalp ridges. So this is where the tight parts of the top of your scalp connect with the looser skin at the sides. Here's a visual representation so you can see just where most people's skin starts to get tighter and less elastic. We're going to be working that exact ridge. So to do this, we're going to be using 2 hands. One hand is going to remain planted firmly at the top of our scalp, and then that same hand is going to push the top of our scalp skin over to relieve some tension along the scalp ridge. And then where that tension is relieved, we're going to be using a second hand to do single-handed pinches along the scalp ridge, where the tight parts of your skin meet the looser parts of your skin. Eventually, this will help loosen up the entire ridge and promote more elasticity at the top of your scalp. So for each session where you're working the sides of your scalp, you're going to want to also spend about 4 or 5 minutes working your scalp ridge. So you work all the way around your scalp ridge, the sides and back of the ridge. I know this is asking for 4 or 5 minutes longer for this session, but it's really important that when you're working the sides of the scalp only, just to spend 4 or 5 minutes on the scalp ridge. It'll help a lot. Once you're done with that, you are finished with the massage routines. You just keep cycling through those over and over again. So here's an outline of each massage breakdown to help with any guidance. So to keep track of each session, you can either set a timer, do a general ballpark of when it's time to switch massage techniques, or just stare at a clock. And if you have any questions, the book has a question and answer guide related to only massage questions, and it should address almost everything that will come up during this process. So keep with it, stick to the regimen, and give this process time to reap results. I'm looking forward to your progress, and I wish you the best with your hair recovery.